Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic in the GCSE. Now, if you remember from the topic of fractions, there are generally two types of fractions. Well, I mean, they're turned into decimals. Reoccurring decimals is the topic that we're going to discuss today. What is a reoccurring decimal? First of all, a reoccurring decimal by definition is a pattern of numbers that repeat forever. That repeat forever. And what that means is that, for example, there's two cases of this. For example, you can have something like 1 over 3. And 1 over 3, if you divide this manually or even put it in a calculator, this should give you something like 0.333, and it continues forever. Now, this pattern of numbers is known as a recurring decimals. When a fraction like this is converted into a decimal, you get this. This decimal is known as a recurring decimal. Now, how do you show this decimal? Well, there's two ways to do this. You can either say 0.3 dot or 0.3 bar. Both of them essentially are saying that this is a reoccurring decimal. However, sometimes you cannot, over here 1 digit is repeating. It's 333 and 3 is the repeated number. But you can also have another case. Let's say this is case B, and in which it's more than 1 digit. For example, it's 0.143, 143, 143. Over here, this continues, by the way. The pattern that is continuing is only for one number, or 3 digits. Sorry, it's more than one digit. So you can have like 0.143, and you can say you basically write the dot on the number where the repeated patterns start and end. So 1 on top of 1 and 1 on top of 3. Or you can just simply say 0.14 bar. And that means that that is a recurring number. Now, the important part to understand is that a recurring decimal is different from a terminating decimal. It's different from a terminating decimal. Basically, simply in the fact that terminating decimals are finite. And what we mean by that is that they come to an end. All right. So, for example, a terminating decimal like 1 over 20 is essentially 0.05. And as you can see, there's no repeated pattern over here, so this is for sure a terminating decimal. Now, how do you distinguish between a terminating decimal and a recurring decimal? How can you is there a way to look at a fraction and say, well, that's definitely going to give us a recurring decimal, or it's definitely going to give us a terminating decimals? Well, the answer is yes, and this is important for the GCSE. Let's write this down then. Let's write this down. So let me just get rid of this. Okay. So here we go. All right. So if you remember from the fraction part, generally, if you have a fraction and there's two numbers, one at the top and one at the bottom, right? Now, the top number, that is known as the numerator, while the bottom number is known as the denominator. The denominator is the key in deciding whether you get a terminating decimal, or whether you get a reoccurring decimal, Now, let's see how that happens. If it's a terminating decimal, then the denominator has to be a prime factor of only 2, the number 2, and 5. But if it's a reoccurring decimal, then the denominator of that fraction should be any other prime factor other than 2 and 5, so all other prime factors. For example, let's say I have, right now I only talk about only prime factors of 2 and 5, and on the next part I have all other prime factors. So let me give you some examples. For example, 1 over 5 is a prime factor of 2 and 5. The denominator is a prime factor of only 2 and 5. Or 1 over 200 and 125, or 1 over 2, or 1 over 20. And for this one, all other prime factors, like you can get 1 over 7, or 1 over 35, or 1 over 3, or 1 over 6. So over here, we know that 1 over 5 is 0.5. 1 over 125 is 0.008. And 1 over 2 is 0.5. And 1 over 20 is 0.05. Just this one, the first one is actually 1 over 5 is 0.2. Now, as you can see, all of these are examples of terminating decimals. That means that they come to an end. But how about these ones? Well, pay close attention to this one. Well, 1 over 7 is approximately, if you put it in a calculator, you get a number like 0.142857. And the repeated pattern is basically between 1 to 7. So all the digits that you have over here, 142857, is the repeated part. So you can draw a dot on top of 1 and one dot on top of 7. The next one, 1 over 35, is something like 0.0285714, and the repeated pattern starts at 2 and ends at 4. So that's where you draw the 2 dots or just a long bar. Now 1 over 3, on the other hand, gives us 0.3. So we just draw 1 point on top of 3. And 0.6 should give us 0.16 bar or point. Now over here, this means that all of these all these 4 fractions are examples of recurring decimals. And so when I say 1 over 6 is 0.16 dot, that means that the 6 is only the repeating number. So I have 0.1, 6, 6, 6, 6, and the 6 basically continues forever. There you go. I hope that you are able to understand this topic. After this, we will learn about the conversions of recurring decimals into fractions. Thank you for watching, and good luck.